Hello everyone, hope you're all having a fantastic day, and welcome back once again to another breakdown video for Godzilla Singular Point. If you missed the first two breakdowns, I made a playlist for these videos that should make it easier to find. There's a lot to discuss concerning these episodes, so let's get started with the breakdown for episode 7, titled either Jikon no Gimonfu, Time Question Mark, or Omniarch in English. It begins with Godzilla's Aquatilis rapidly pursuing Manda into Tokyo Bay before attacking and killing it, and then continuing on to the harbor, where surrounded by a cloud of red mist it transforms into a new form, Godzilla Amphibia. While the previous form looked more like Titanosaurus than any previous Godzilla incarnation, this one most closely resembles Varan. Mei and Lee discuss Archetype, and Lee tells her that she wants her to meet someone called BB. Mei discovers that Archetype is a trans-temporal material existing in both this world and another simultaneously. The place where these two worlds meet is known as the Singular Point, hence the title of the series. During their discussion, their flight is unexpectedly diverted to Milan due to a surge of radon sightings across Europe. At the Shiva facility in India, we learn that the kaiju seem to be producing and controlling the red dust. The man who led the previous search party, who turns out to be the director of research there, and the mysterious aforementioned BB, requests permission to use something called the orthogonal diagonalizer, a term we first encountered in the margins of Ashihara's notes that Mei found in the library in the previous episode. Back in Tokyo, we see that the red dust continues to cover everything, with Godzilla Amphibia remaining stationary as radons circle overhead. We discover that the radon, which frequently died after a short time, have recently become much more resilient in the red dust, as this is seemingly from their world, and as it expands, so too does their habitable range. In essence, it appears this red dust is something akin to the ecosystem in Stephen King's The Mist. If you're unfamiliar with that story, the basic premise was that alien organisms thrived within an area blanketed by an unusual mist, which was caused by a secret military experiment, opening a bridge between worlds, allowing another world to begin to seep into our own. In Godzilla terms, this plotline could also possibly be compared to the Dimension Tide weapon in Godzilla X Megaguirus that had similar results. In the airport in Milan, Mei remembers the legend of Gojira, which was misread as Koshira in the first episode, and Lee compares it to a similar story in the Book of Revelations, a passage in the Bible foretelling an end-of-the-world scenario. She informs Mei that the red dust is actually the first phase of Archetype in his raw material form. At Otaki Factory, Goro unveils his grandiose plan to fight Godzilla using Jet Jaguar and a weapon made from the broken horn of Anguirus. Initially he had planned to use it to make an arrowhead, but Satomi convinces him to use it to make a spear instead. Yoon runs an analysis of the song and discovers a date and time embedded within, July 6, 2030 at 7 p.m., which turns out to be roughly half an hour after Yoon and Haberu's investigation of the mansion in episode 1. Yoon states that there had been reports of the song coming from the mansion some 60 years prior. Sato goes down to the basement of Misakioku to find the skeleton now shrouded in red dust, with cables hooked up to its skull, and a strange plush radon toy on the floor. He kneels down to examine the doll when he's surprised and tased by someone who seems to be running some sort of experiments on the bones. Back in Europe, Mei, Lee, and her associate are driving to London as Mei and Lee discuss the archetype and its relation to the kaiju. It seems that although up to 13 phases have been theorized, only 3 are capable of being handled at that moment. It is also revealed that Ashihara predicted the evolution of kaiju from the red dust after he discovered a minute amount of the substance while studying the jellyfish. This of course implies that it may be a naturally occurring substance, albeit in small quantities. We also learn from Lee that the 13th phase of Archetype apparently allows for the manipulation of the other phases and is known as orthogonal diagonalizer. Back at the Shiva facility, Sharanga breaks through the containment barrier as security personnel attempt to stop it with high-powered sniper rifles and explosive charges. Enraged, the beast rushes them, which forces their retreat when BB arrives with the orthogonal diagonalizer, a device that we previously learned shouldn't yet exist, and tosses it at Sharanga. Fans of the franchise will instantly recognize it as having the same shape and initials as the Oxygen Destroyer, the dreaded weapon of mass destruction that was used to kill Godzilla in the original 1954 movie. BB detonates the orthogonal diagonalizer in the red dust cloud that surrounds Shiranga, which hardens the red particles into numerous crystalline barbs that impale the beast. The doors close as BB stares into the eyes of Shiranga, whose ultimate fate is unknown. Sato meets with Kaneko. She informs him of the facility in India and her theory of certain points on the Earth, the titular singular points, which she believes are entryways to hell. Sato tells her that the song that attracted the Radon in the first place appears to have originated from the skeleton under Misakioku Radio Observatory. Yoon and Mei discuss the orthogonal diagonalizer and time hypothesis via text as Goro, Haberu, and Satomi set to work upgrading Jet Jaguar in preparation for the coming battle. The government officially designates the monster in Tokyo Godzilla, likely naming it after the mythical creature on the mural, as the military is deployed to combat it. Back at Otaki Factory, the new and improved Jet Jaguar is revealed with much longer legs, and now much more closely resembling the classic design. It is now fully automated as well, as Yoon has uploaded his AI program Jung, giving Jet Jaguar its own consciousness of sorts. We also see the new Anguirus Horn Spear, a concept very similar to the Godzilla dorsal plate battle axe that Kong wields in Legendary's Godzilla vs. Kong movie. Goro declares, "Let's go Godzilla hunting," as the episode comes to a close. Episode 8, which has the Japanese title of Maboroshi no Sugata, meaning phantom figure or graftage, for whatever reason. The JSDF begins its assault by attacking Godzilla Amphibia with at least a company of Type 16 MCVs, which responds by emitting some kind of freezing vapor from its mouth, in a manner very similar to the start of Shin Godzilla's Beam. Vapor ignites and a massive explosion engulfs the area. In the aftermath, Amphibia appears motionless, encased in some kind of hardened red material resembling melted glass, which Yoon later theorizes may be some kind of self-preservation tactic, which implies that the military was able to do some level of damage to it, at least at this stage. Otaki Factory is en route to Tokyo to engage the kaiju when they decide to stop off along the way to investigate a manda carcass that is washed up onto a beach. The military determines that Godzilla has entered a new pupil form, signifying its possible metamorphosis into yet another form. They try to attack it with bombs off-screen, but they don't appear to have any effect. The entire Godzilla subplot here is extremely reminiscent of Shin Godzilla. We see more of Sato's investigation that leads him to a postal location that has stored 30 years worth of forwarded mail between India and Ashihara's London residence. Lee and Mei arrive in London, but so do the swarms of Radon and Manda, which converge on the city just like what happened in Tokyo earlier. Lee takes Mei to Ashihara's former home, containing all of his research in the hopes that she can solve what they could not. She also explains that Ashihara used some sort of super calculator to process the temporal data, but became concerned when all signs pointed to a future catastrophe. Back at the Shiba facility, BB, the eccentric research director, is detained for his reckless use of the orthogonal diagonalizer without understanding what could actually happen. He is soon freed by Michael Stevens, Professor Lee's associate and a representative of the Shiva Consortium, who informs the director of the facility that the board has approved the relaunch of Ashihara's experiments, and proposes a meeting in London. Meanwhile, Jet Jaguar talks to some local kids while Otaki Factory continues to investigate the Manda corpse. Goro thinks Godzilla is the culprit, but Haberu thinks there may be another perpetrator. Parasitic creature like a sea louse or roach that might have burst out from inside the creature. As they debate the possible cause of death, they overhear some workers talking about a missing colleague, and notice strange purple webbing covering a nearby wharf or shipyard. They go to check it out when they are ambushed by a strange arthropod kaiju, resembling a cross between the kaiju Megalon, Kumonga, and Shockirus from previous Godzilla films. Jet Jaguar quickly dispatches one with ease, but detects 6 more rapidly approaching as the team discovers that a warehouse seems to have been converted into a nesting ground by the creatures. Mei discovers that Ashihara's supercalculator may in fact be connected to singular points, the hypothetical meeting points between universes, and that there are potentially hundreds of such points, all with competing calculations, no doubt related to the aforementioned catastrophe, possibly implying that it is an event in flux as opposed to a fixed point in time. Meanwhile, the Otaki factory team flee for their lives as Jet Jaguar does its best to fend off the bug monsters. With each kill, the creatures erupt into a thick, viscous blue goo, which may be more than it seems. During the skirmish, another worker is taken, and Jet Jaguar goes into the doorway of the warehouse to investigate the nest, when suddenly the blue goo forms into another life form, now resembling this series' incarnation of Hedorah, the smog monster, which seemingly reanimates the corpses of the dead arthropods, which then proceed to surround the team as the episode comes to a close. The 9th and final episode for this breakdown is titled Taore Yuku Hito no, meaning something like the person who falls. It is also given the alternative English title of Irrompent. I'm not quite sure where Toho's coming up with these titles. Somebody definitely is getting very creative with the dictionary, it seems. I'm also slightly confused by the English titles as they're completely different from the Japanese ones and never appear anywhere in the episode, instead only showing up on the episode menu on Netflix, which in turn never actually lists the Japanese titles that are in the actual episodes. I'm not sure what's going on there. Anyway, this one begins with the military launching another airstrike on the still motionless Godzilla cocoon. This time there is a reaction, however, as the hard casing crumbles, revealing a new form, an enormous teal-colored dinosaur creature, now much more closely resembling Godzilla, but still a unique form we haven't seen before. While the first form was clearly based on Titanosaurus, and the second was very reminiscent of Varan, I'm not entirely sure what the inspiration is for this third form. Perhaps Gorosaurus? Although the head's much more snake-like, or maybe even Ricardo Delgado's concept art for the unmade 1990s American Godzilla movie. Either way, this new version of Godzilla begins to move deeper into the city, which is once again blanketed in a thick red fog. It begins to spew red liquid from its mouth, very similar to the second and third forms of Shin Godzilla, when it is struck in the back by another bomb, in a scene that is once again very similar to one in Shin Godzilla. Also, like that film, a second bomb is intercepted by a strange new power. In the case of Shin Godzilla, this was an array of beams launched from Godzilla's dorsal plates. However, in this case, the blood-like fluid inside Godzilla solidifies into a gooey substance, not unlike that which was seen inside the arthropod kaiju in the previous episode, or even the 1980s version of the Blob. It proceeds to wrap itself around the bomb, causing it to detonate harmlessly without inflicting any damage to Godzilla, who then begins to charge his iconic heat beam, which also now has an odd halo effect around his mouth. We briefly cut to some military personnel discussing what they refer to as Godzilla's reactive armor and how it is similar to Anguirus' ability to predict an attack and react before it is struck. Back at the wharf, the battle continues to rage between Jet Jaguar and a swarm of Megalon-like arthropods as the Otaki factory crew take refuge in the staff room of the warehouse. We discover that Jet Jaguar's battery is running low as Yoon gets a series of texts from Mei concerning the supercalculator discovery and the catastrophe. Just then, the workers that are with the team notice their colleague encased in the webbing of the bug kaiju nest, along with the desiccated remains of several other staff members, confirming their malicious nature. Outside, the police arrive onto the scene and begin to check out the area when they are attacked by a flying version of the creatures, confirming another form for these kaiju as well. Goro decides to save the guy in the web while one of the workers informs them that there's a boat in the harbor they can use to escape. But Kanda, the worker trapped in the web, is the only one with the key, which further cements Goro's resolve to rescue him. Mei discovers that the catastrophe is likely due to the expansion of the singular points and determines that it's supposed to happen very soon. She rushes to find Professor Lee and ends up barging into a conference call between the professor and the staff of the Shiva facility in India, who then tells Mei to share her findings with everyone. She does this by telling them that the catastrophe is a real-world event that is said to happen very shortly. Apparently Ashihara likened it to the passage from the Bhagavad Gita, the ancient Hindu scripture that includes the line, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds," which was quoted by Robert Oppenheimer upon his creation of the atomic bomb, and was incidentally also used in Legendary's first teaser trailer for the 2014 Godzilla movie. The consortium agree that their best course of action is to finalize the orthogonal diagonalizer project in order to neutralize the red dust. Mei disagrees, however, and states that stopping the catastrophe should be the first priority. But she's ignored, and has decided that Lee and Mei will meet with them as soon as possible. Another interesting development, it appears that Sharanga and the red dust have completely vanished, possibly implying that the kaiju used it to escape somehow. Mei realizes that the cause of the catastrophe is probably due to singular points growing and the consortium's usage of archetype, and that Godzilla is actually one of the singular points, probably the epicenter of the catastrophe itself. Cut back to the warehouse. As Goro and Haberu rescue Kanda, Jet Jaguar fights off the horde of giant bugs inside. At some point during the battle, the warehouse catches fire, and the team manages to make their way to the boat. Meanwhile, back in England, Lee and Mei attempt to catch their flight out of London. However, they are attacked by Radon while stuck in traffic and attempt to flee by foot. In the chaos, Mei forgets her notes, and a girl loses her cat. Professor Lee attempts to save it when she's attacked by the Radon, and Mei is forced to continue on without her. Once again, back at the warehouse, Jet Jaguar makes a desperate decision as its battery continues to drain. Jettisons its backpack and makes a mad dash for the boat, leaping onto the side of the ship just as the last of its energy fades. With the robots safe, but drained of all power, the Otaki factory team and the other survivors manage to escape out to sea, as the warehouse and the nest contained within burns in the background. Yoon, finally able to charge his phone, which had also died during the conflict, discovers that Mei had sent him the files concerning Ashihara's findings. As the crew approaches Tokyo, they see what appears to be an enormous mushroom cloud of red dust has seemingly engulfed the entire city, which Yoon theorizes is the catastrophe that Mei warned him about earlier. Overall, while the series starts off kinda slow, I would definitely say the pace picks up as it progresses, and the last couple of episodes have been really great in my opinion. The plot is complex, but fascinating, and the action and animation are both really solid. Also, while some of the kaiju designs look a bit strange at first, I think they work much better in motion and grew on me over time. I'm really enjoying this series so far, and I'm looking forward to where it goes in the final few episodes. If you like this breakdown video, be sure to leave a like, and let me know what you think of the show in the comments section below. And as always, thanks for watching.